I'm Amber Rabinov. I worked for over a decade in banking. I felt I had a lot of similar experiences actually to you, Anna, when you were speaking. So I worked as an economist and strategist for ANZ Bank, so an Australian bank, 5 years in Australia, and then 8 years ago moved over to London in a similar role. And like you, I was sort of thrust into my career break through management change and a redundancy when I was pregnant with my second child. So didn't think it was worthwhile going back into the workforce straight away, and so took some time out to spend with my children and my family.
So I've predominantly been in the asset management world from the get-go. So I started off at Foreign Colonial on the retail marketing side, involved in the launch of ISAs and heavily involved in investment trusts. Then moved to Gartmore Investment Management, where I was there for over 11 years, and I managed the RFP team. Then moved to the UK and European sales team, had a book of my own UK clients. Then I moved to Fidelity, and there I was supporting the European sales efforts, covering Nordics, Netherlands, Spain, Portugal. So involved in a whole raft of sort of process on the institutional side, and then moved to the consultant relations team. And I think my break is a slightly longer saga in that having my first child was fairly easy, but having my second child proved to be extremely difficult, and having failed 3 cycles of IVF and trying to hold on to a job and family life and a husband who was never there was proving to be quite a challenge. And then we decided that we were going to go through an adoption process, at which point I just thought I need to take some time out and reevaluate everything and my life. And also give my son some time, who I never really dropped off or picked up and didn't know his teachers. So decided it was time in my life that I made a decision to just cut away from the work life and take some time out.
What do you think your career break gave you in terms of skills, life experience?
I think perspective, hugely important. I think I was on a treadmill, and I found it really hard to get off the treadmill. And it wasn't until once I actually decided that I was going to have a career break that I realised what was important to me, why being at home was important. I felt I needed to get my life in order, my family life in order, and I wasn't achieving that while I was trying to hold on to a full-time job and all the rest of it. So I think that was really important to me. The adoption process was a hugely difficult and challenging process. So I knew that was going to be a full-time job in itself, but just to sort of time away and learning about yourself and what was important to you, I think was really important. I mean, I gained a huge amount of skills in that time because I wasn't just doing, looking after my son and spending time with him and doing the adoption process, but also I joined the PTA and raised lots of money for the school. So I was now hugely visible to the school and my son. I had to deal with extremely difficult challenges while doing the adoption process, and also invested in a couple of properties and renovated one. So, you learn lots and lots of skills, and you keep yourself extremely busy. And despite your son thinking you're at home watching TV all day, you're not actually sitting at home watching TV all day. So a huge amount of perspective in life, I think.
I'd agree with that. And I feel like I got to, participate in somewhat, selfish pursuits whilst I had the time off. So my husband works for himself. We got to spend, nice chunks of time back in Australia, for instance, that I wouldn't have been able to do had I still been working. We got to spend time in the mountains and, focus on fitness and things like that. Other women returners have mentioned, doing marathons where you don't really get the time for training for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, it's a bit of an indulgence, isn't it? Going to the gym or going to play tennis. You don't have time. You leave when it's dark and you come back when it's dark. So when are you going to play tennis? Midnight sort of thing. So, definitely.
How do you think your career break has sort of benefited you coming back to work and the sort of, bringing those skills into the workforce?
I think, like what Anna mentioned, it's not necessarily the skills you bring back, but it's the perspective and it's the freshness, the motivation. Like Anna, I really wanted to come back to work. I'd worked out, I missed it. So that energy and enthusiasm, I think, was important. And, being a mother, having that, time of the day when you do have to leave, efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't hang around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think for me it was definitely, I felt I'd now given a lot to my family, and it was time really. I felt I was losing my own identity during that process as well, and by the end of it I was like, oh, I really want a bit of me back, and going back to work was part of my identity. So I think for me it was really important to get that element of myself back, and I felt hugely motivated because I, felt I'd given my family a lot of my energy, and now I wanted to sort of get back into what I was good at, and being professional, being in a professional environment again. So I think that was really important. So the motivation factor was huge.
Huge. Okay. And what fears did you have, and what challenges did you think you would face coming back in?
Well, I mean, I was off for 4.5 years, so I thought, there's no way anyone's going to want me. I probably can't even hold a conversation professionally anymore. So yeah, you have a lot of self-doubt, fear, also how you're going to be judged about the time you've taken off. It wasn't 1 year or 2 years, it was 4.5 years, and it felt like a really long time. So I just thought I'd be written off. I wasn't sure if I'd be welcomed, or they would look at my break as a positive. So I felt hugely the fear of being judged, and so I lacked a bit of confidence in sort of saying, look, I still have all the skill set, my brain hasn't fallen out of my head, it's still there intact, and I've actually acquired and added more to my skill set. So I think all of those fears were definitely there, and and how difficult the process was going to be. I think that scared me to death.
And to that, I think I'd add just the juggling. How was I going to juggle the family life? I'm quite a details person, and having to give all that up, finding the right person to help look after your children, and also the fear of being judged, that cut-off time, I need to leave by 5 or 5:30 to get home. Is everybody else doing that? And you sort of find out, no, everybody, no one's sticking around until, very, very late hours in the evening, it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sort of bearing in mind some of those sort of fears and challenges you thought you might face, what was really important to you in terms of helping you back at the start of your sort of transition back? What were the important elements?
I think a lot of the structural elements that you included in the program, so the peers, the mentors, the buddy network, were really important, just to make you feel that you weren't alone and there was help there if you needed it, even if it's just someone to talk to about your worries and your fears.
I mean, I would say it was all about how easy the process was going to be. For me, it was about the easiness of getting back into work, and also is it going to be a case of having to make applications after applications, and getting constantly rejected and judged because you've met a headhunter, and flexibility. I think for me, easiness and flexibility were the two key factors. If I didn't get the flexibility, it was just going to be a no-go for me. I mean, I spoke to somebody that a colleague had recommended to go and speak to because they thought it'd be ideal. As soon as they said, oh, you might need to spend 3 weeks in America, for me it was like, okay, well, this isn't going to happen, so might as well end the conversation here. So I think those two elements were key for me, the easiness of the process and how much flexibility I was going to get.
Yeah, brilliant. And how do you feel the structure of an actual returner programme, so sort of the longer term placement, empowers you to sort of have that balance and kind of balance your home life and the flexibility?
Yeah, I think what's really struck out for me on the returners programme is sort of how you're treated like an adult. You are treated like a professional, and you're not somebody who's, just want to come in, have 6 months out, and then that's it, I've done my bit, I'm going to go back to being a mum and a full-time housewife or whatever. So I think that's been really important to me. I think what's empowered me is the fact that on this programme, you are able to ask the question of, am I going to get flexibility? It's not just about the terms that the employer is trying to impose on you, but also the terms that you would like to work to. And I think that's fundamental in getting the returners back to work. So I think that's quite the key in the process of empowering the returners to be able to question and work together in terms of what's going to work for the employer as well as the returner, and make it a success together. So it's not just a one-way stream.
I guess for me, the program just formalises a point of entry. I'd worked over a decade in banking, had lots of experience, and then I took 2.5 years out, and I had spoken to recruiters and applied for jobs, and I sort of got the feeling that 2.5 years out discounted the experience that I had, and working in financial markets, the conversations that you need to have in interviews was a lot of work to get up to speed, to just have a base level opinion on what's going on. And I guess the program helps the business to recognise people can still think about issues even if they've had the time off and they haven't been working in the market.
Absolutely. We've talked a bit about the structure of the program, but how important has the content of the role been for you both, and kind of the sort of fit to your prior, I suppose, skill set?
I mean, for me, it was perfect, and I think we've spoken about it a number of times amongst the network. I thought I had the most perfect placement out of all the returners. I'd wanted to make that sell side to buy side transition, use my skills as an economist and as a strategist, and then I could extend them. And the teams just let me run in the role from the first day. It's been fantastic.
Equally, I think I've been placed in the right area. So I'm sitting within the institutional division, which is where I've always been. But I think for me, the role is quite new. It's client service as opposed to sort of bringing in new clients. So for me, that's slightly different. But that I wanted because it's different. It's something I can learn about. But also the products and strategies are very different. I hadn't really dealt with real assets before. It was predominantly sort of hedge funds or long only and fixed income products. So for me, that was again another element to add value to and learn about. So I found the fit perfect, and I think I'm sitting within the right division of the business. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. How important would you say is the sort of the learning and development structure and support?
I think I mean it's almost going to sound, I mean, it's almost too good to be true. It's just been absolutely fantastic.
I haven't paid them.
And I feel the buy-in at Aviva has, as Julianne mentioned, it's not the buy-in just at senior management and HR level, but also your manager and the team that you're working within. And from day one, I felt very welcomed, and nobody judged me. They kind of treated me as an adult and a professional who's worked for nearly 20 years. So I feel it's been hugely successful. My buddy is outside of my immediate team, which is, my mentor is outside of my immediate team, which has been great because she's really helped me to sort of open up wider networks. My buddy is in the immediate team, so I can go to her sort of on a day-to-day basis. And my manager has been hugely supportive and has, from day one said to me, look, take your time, it's fine. We're not going to judge you if you're not, doing everything that everyone else is doing, and it's fine. So, from the day one, I felt hugely supported, and I didn't feel any pressure. Felt the workshops were extremely important. I think the fact that there was 8 of us and we met on a regular basis at the workshops and our own lunches on Monday certainly, helped us to share any sort of concerns and fears we had and any questions we had, and I think that altogether has worked really well for every single one of us, I would say.
And I think just the visibility of the program within the business has been valuable. People who I've spoken to, maybe it's a generational thing, but you have professional couples, men whose wives have stayed at home to look after children for a number of years. They can see how these programs work. For some, they've seen their wives try it, returnship programs which haven't really worked so well. So I think this provides a good example, and for senior leadership to show them that we can enter roles and do the job.
And I think it hasn't just been lip service, because we've met senior members, we've the board members, we've met senior executives, and the feedback has always been very positive. So I feel the buy-in has been at all levels, and that's that's I think very critical to the success of the overall program.
So in terms of a sort of a route to entry, it'd be sort of interesting to sort of get your perspective in terms of why, therefore, the programmes are important other than other methodologies, I guess, for women to come back.
Well, there's a pool of talent out there that need it. I mean, I've got a huge number of friends who would kill to come back to work, but on the basis that they are going to be, flexible with working from home, with the hours they can do, with the number of days they can do, whole intelligent qualified women who have taken time out because they've had to or they've wanted to spend time at home. I feel you're penalised, you're being penalised for making those choices sometimes, and it seems unfair and also a lost opportunity for an organisation. We go on about graduate programmes, and every firm in the world has a graduate program, and they're tapping in, a pool of talent that they think are going to be the next generation of leaders. But there is a pool of talent out there who, have a huge amount of skill set and experience and, ideas and that they can bring to the table. And I feel organisations are missing out if we don't tap into that pool of talent. I mean, there was 8 out of 35, so 27 women out there didn't get that opportunity that we've been fortunate to have. So I felt a real loss for them as well. So I think it's definitely something that has to be the future for all organisations.
Yeah.
And I'd add that's a way for an organisation to sort of express its culture, more broadly through the program. So we've come in and we've learnt, flexible working is actually, it's not something special that's been granted to us just because we're women returners. It's accessible across the business. And it's not necessarily something that you'd realise or believe when it's led with in an advertisement for a role.
Yeah, and I think the way that you voice it right from the beginning is really important. So if you're going to, we know a returner program who called up somebody and said, would you like to come in for an interview? And they said, I'm on holiday. And they said, would you mind coming back from your holiday? It's not really the way to start any program. So I think that's really key, how the offset is really important, how you're going to sort of the culture and how you message that across is really important. Yeah.
So I guess sort of finally, what, in your own words, has the program really given you personally?
Well, people at home don't think I'm a slave anymore, which is quite nice. My son asked me how my day was, asked me where I worked, what I do. So, it's great that a 12-year-old is interested in what his mummy does every day. My 3-year-old daughter is really sort of, have a nice day, mummy, and, it's really good. And I think I need to be a good role model for her, but also for my son as well, that, mums do work and we do have brains and we are professionals and, we work really hard for our qualifications and that we can still use them. So I think dynamics at home has certainly changed. Yeah. I'm happier, therefore my husband's happier. And I think overall I feel a bit of myself back. And I think the fact that at Aviva I've been able to go 4 days means I can on Friday go to the gym or play tennis. It means I've, able to indulge a little bit as well. So I feel, very satisfied with life at the moment. So I feel it's really given me a lot back.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, and certainly the confidence in myself, knowing that I can do the role, because you do start to doubt yourself once you take a bit of time off. So that's been really important to me. Yeah. As well as the change in family dynamics. My children appreciate my cooking a lot more now that Nanny's not so great.
Adult conversation is good.
Yeah.